If you're looking to outfish your friends this November, well, you're in the right place. I'm going to be sharing with you the breakdown of the lures that's going to give you that competitive edge, especially when these temperatures are dropping fast. And because of that, I'm going to do this video a little bit differently than all the bait videos I did just this entire past year. I'm going to be breaking it down by water temperature because I know that it's drastically changing across the country. So let's start with the first temperature range. This is going to be between 55 and 65 degrees. And we're going to start with lure number one, which is going to be the jerkbait. I actually have that hooked up right now because I was fishing it yesterday up here in Northeast Ohio. Now, the jerkbait, man, this thing was absolutely slaying when I was down at Lake Gunnersville a couple weekends ago for the Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series, and I caught over 100 bass on this bait. And now the great thing about this is that it imitates a dying bait fish, right? And there's a lot of bait balls here in Northeast Ohio. Simply throw this to the other side of that bait ball, twitch, twitch, pause, twitch, twitch, pause, and boom, the bass will nail it. Now, doing that all day long can be really tiring. So you're gonna want the right length of rod. So I'm gonna be choosing a 6/8 length rod. And what line I'm throwing it on, this is gonna be Seaguar InvizX 12-pound line. Now there's two particular jerk baits that I really like. The first one is going to be the Bill Lewis scope stick, which I picked up in my FISHVAULT box just a few weekends ago. Unfortunately, lost that one early in the tournament. And then I moved over what the rest of my team was also catching a significantly large number of bass with, which was the Berkeley Stunna, S-T-U-N-N-A. And what was interesting is I don't have live scope, but my buddy does, and he was telling me what was happening underneath the water when it comes to fish behavior. And he's like, hey, when you throw this out first, you can get twitch, twitch, pause, and kind of let it be more erratic. But as you get it closer to where you are, he says you're going to speed that up because a lot of times you'll have chasers, and that little extra speed is going to get them to commit. All right, the next lure I'm going to be using in that 55 to 65 degree category is going to be your swim bait, right? You can use hard swim baits or soft swim baits. For my soft swim baits, I am going to be bringing out, and if you follow the channel, you know I love this lure, which is going to be my mag draft from Megabass. Now this is going to be the 8-inch mag draft, and what I'll do is this, I'll throw it out, kind of has a nice sink, and then I'll kind of run that really slow along the bottom. You don't want to move this too fast because you'll end up blowing it out left or right. But if you do this at a nice speed, this gives out a nice thumping action, and those bass will absolutely clobber it. Now, if you have a hard, kind of a glide bait, work that next to visible structure, and they will nail it. Now, with the Megabass Mag Draft, they have the 6-inch, the 8-inch, but they also have the old 10-inch. And so these things are absolutely awesome for getting those trophy bass. I take a deeper dive into that I'm not going to go into right now, so I'll throw that video in the description below. The next lure for the 55 to 65 degree is going to be the jig, which I actually have it tied on right now, and this is the one that I like. All right, so I actually have this on a swim jig. I usually don't. I usually have it on some type of football head jig, but it's gonna have a missile D-bomb trailer on it. I just caught a nice bass yesterday on this here in Northeast Ohio, and the water temperature is around 55, so right on that line. But what I like to do with this, throw it next to structure, throw it along deep ledges, and basically fall to the bottom. And you can either drag this along the bottom, kind of kicks up the dirt, gets the attention of that bass. I kind of hone in on it, and the second time that moves, I actually just suck it up. A lot of times I just kind of let it pop, which also gets a lot of bites. The next jig that I love, and if you've been following the channel, you know why I love it. I think I got 20 bass over 20 inches this past year on the old swim jig. So I use basically one type of swim jig. This is going to be the all-terrain tackle. These are 3/8 ounce. I believe this is Tennessee shad color. And the trailer is a 3.75 Rage Swimmer. This is going to be Ghost Shad. And my favorite is KVD Magic. So this is what has been absolutely slaying big bass for me all year long. And I still have it tied on right now. And the rod that I have this tied on to is going to be a 7.4 extra heavy, extra fast. And I'm using 20-pound fluorocarbon, and I tie off this bad boy with a Palomar knot. Now, a few things about jigs. There's a lot of different types, and a lot of people don't know that, so they just tie on a jig and they think a jig is a jig is a jig, and it's not. They're all designed in a very specific way for a very specific purpose. And also, there's a lot of different modifications you can do to them to kind of make them fish to your liking. Now, I got 2 videos for you, 6 jig types, common ones, and how to fish them, as well as 6 jig modifications, and I'll throw both of those videos below so you can check them out after this one. The next lure I have for you in 55 to 65 degrees is going to be your bladed jig, which I also have tied up. Actually using these, folks. And so, this is gonna be really great on those windy days. Throw this bad boy right here, or stained water. I like fishing these as well. So This is going to be the Evo Elite. I threw the KVD Magic, this is what that color looks like, on the back of this. And I like throwing this in somewhat shallow water. I'll kind of let it fall all the way bottom and then slowly reel it, kind of let it kill it every once in a while. Once again, this is a jig. It's going to hop to the bottom, hop to the bottom, hop to the bottom. And the bass will pick up on that sound, especially in stained water, come over and smash it. Now, many brands have their version of the bladed jig. Now, Berkley has the Slobber Knocker, Chatterbait is by Z-Man, so is the Evo Elite. Also the Jackhammer, which a lot of people swear by. Straight King has the Thunder Cricket, and Booyah has the Melee. So there's a lot, and there's a lot more, trust me. All right, so for the rod length is gonna run for me around 7 foot to 7'3". So you have it somewhere in there, a medium heavy power fast action rod is going to do really well on the chatterbait. The reel I'm going to want to see anywhere from 7.5 to 1 to 8 to 1. Pick up a lot of line pretty quickly. And I'm going to use anywhere from 12 pound to 18 pound straight fluorocarbon. Now, depending on what weight I use will really depend on the size and the weight of that particular bladed jig. All right, so a little tip on fishing the bladed jig. I like to train my brain just to get a little delayed hook set on this. We're not talking like frog hook set, 1/1000, 2/1000, but remember your brain stimulus is like really quick. 0.15 seconds. So you got to train it just to let it inhale it just a little bit in order to get a better hookup ratio. All right, so the last lure I have for you in that 55 to 65 degree range is going to be the spinnerbait. Now, I have a trailer hook on this, so I kind of do mine a little bit differently, but essentially what you want to do with the spinnerbait is you want to match your blades to the size of the bait fish in your particular body of water. And then once you do that, I know that yesterday I was out, I saw them, they're all that size right there. So this was perfect for yesterday. I picked up a few, which was nice. However, there's a couple of things with this. You're going to throw this in the backs of creeks, in the backs of creek channels, and don't be afraid to knock this up against any type of hard wood or stumps that you have that you see underneath the water with your electronics, or that you visibly see sticking out of the water. So there's a lot of different type of blades. As you can see, there's a willow leaf blade on this one and also a Colorado blade on this as well. So in early fall, I like to have double willow leaf blades. As I get to the middle of fall, this is what I'm going to be using, a willow leaf and a Colorado. And then as it gets a lot colder toward the end of fall, I'm going to be looking for a double Colorado blade, really to slow this down, send out a lot more thumping and vibration with that wider blade, grabbing the attention of those nearby bass. So the rod length for me for a spinnerbait is going to be a 7 foot to 7'2". It's going to have this medium heavy power, moderate action tip, and I'm going to be throwing anywhere from probably throw 15 pound fluorocarbon on the spinnerbait. Now, before we hop into the 50 to 55 degrees, I want to show you an app that really helps me out, and I think it's going to help you out. It's called the Deep Dive app, and I've been using it for years. Now, let me walk you through this really quick. Now, I am going to pick a lake that's near me that's known for absolute monsters. There's going to be Portage Lakes, and as I scroll down, and if you're not quite sure in your particular lake what bait to use, this is going to allow you to kind of walk through this. It's going to show you a swim jig, 4 to 10 feet. A creature bait. It's going to give you ratings at the top left too. Square bill crankbait, flipping jig. And what you can do is, if you have clear water, that's going to change up the colors. If you have dirty water, that's going to change it up as well. So for instance, let's go ahead and go stained water, swim jig, 4 to 10 feet, black and blue color. If you click on this, it's going to tell you where in the particular body of water to fish that, or give you examples. Of course, if you have any docks, if you have any channels, it'll walk you through some examples on a flat bank, kind of what that looks like on a topo map. And then I love the retrieve, right? It's going to show you how to fish this particular lure. So if you're like, oh man, there's so many lures out there, I get kind of confused. Well, they all have a different retrieve, and this is what's going to be really nice on this. And then it's going to give you the gear you need to throw this particular lure. For instance, a swim jig, you're going to need a casting rod, 7 to 7.6, fast action, heavy power, 7/1 to 1, fluorocarbon, 20 to 25 pounds. So this is pretty sweet. I'll be from time to time going through this Deep Dive app, but because there's a lot more than just a bait selector. You can go over here to the maps. Check this out. It's letting you know the wind. You can do the wind into the future, I think up to 4 days. And so if you're getting ready to plan a trip, it's going to show you those wind blown shores. So I don't put my name behind a lot of different things, but the Deep Dive app, I really think it'd be beneficial for you to check it out. So please head over to Deep Dive. Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, now let's talk about the lures that perform between 50 and 55 degrees. And we're gonna start with this guy right here, the old blade bait. Look how thin that guy is. All right, so there's gonna be 3 ways that you can fish this bad boy. One, just to throw it out and do a straight retrieve. And you'll notice on all blade baits, you're gonna have probably 2 or 3 different places that you can hook in the snap. And if you put it toward the front, this is gonna have a much tighter wobble as you retrieve it through the water. If you put it toward the back, it's gonna have a slightly larger kind of wobble. And so you can kind of fish it to your liking. I usually just put it right in the middle, to be honest with you. So straight retrieve, number 1, you can yo-yo, to throw this out, and then let it fall, kind of like a swim jig. But I think the most effective way to fish a blade bait is to do it with vertical jigging. So what you do is let this kind of flop to the bottom, kind of twitch it up in the air, this thing will fly, and what it'll do as it falls back down, it starts doing this crazy action, which really will trigger a bite. It's kind of incredible. So essentially it looks like a dying bait fish, kind of pops up, and then this kind of floats to the bottom, and bass simply can't resist. So the thing about blade baits, they actually excel in deeper water, which a lot of times they get overlooked a lot. So highly underrated, might be something those bass don't see very often, because most anglers are gonna choose the next lure, which is gonna be this guy right here, the lipless crankbait. Cold weather, this is when this particular lure is going to shine. This is, I believe, a red-eyed shad by Strike King, and this is a Berkeley War Pig, which is a 3/4 ounce. So this is gonna be a little bit lighter. And when throwing this, I think the best way to throw these is to let it sink to the bottom and just yo-yo it back to you. Really highly effective when the bass are feeding on bait fish, which is what they're doing in this temperature of water. As you can hear, these have knockers in them. That is a lighter knocker. This has a kind of a rattle and knockers in it. And so for this particular technique, you're gonna want kind of a beefier setup. You're gonna wanna use around 12-pound fluorocarbon, maybe 15-pound fluorocarbon. And the ratio, it doesn't need to be super high, probably a 6:1 to 7:1. Now, recently, I don't know if I'd ever buy something this large, but I found this tied up in a bunch of line. This is the Berkeley War Pig, and I actually throw this on a much beefier setup. I actually throw it on my swim jig setup. So I remember finding this, I cut it out of all the braid from some shore anglers that got it caught up, and I threw it on my 3rd cast, caught this nice 19-inch bass, and kind of fell in love with this thing overnight. So if you're interested in a beefier, kind of bigger bait fish, if that's what the size that they are in the lake or wherever it is that you're fishing, check out the Berkeley War Pig. I'll throw the link out. That's sticky hooks there. I'll throw the link in the description below. Another lure that's going to excel in that 50 to 55 degree range is going to be spinnerbait. Keep this one tied on. So I'm not going to talk about this anymore, but the next one right after that, if you don't have this tied on, this is going to be your shallow diving crankbait. So I believe this is the Spro Little John. I've caught a lot of bass on this. It's got an interesting lip. It's actually made of kind of that computer chip type style. So I'll throw this in the link description below, but you're going to fish this in somewhat shallow water, right? You want to bump this thing off of everything that you possibly can. If you're getting this hooked up a lot, you're fishing it in the right place. So the line that I'm going to use for a square bill is going to be 15-pound fluoro. The gear ratio, I don't need things super fast, it's going to be 6:1, 7:1. And I'm going to throw this on a medium power, moderate action rod. And one last bait before we move into the sub 50 degree temperature water, and that's going to be keep your swim baits on. This is a little different than a mag draft. This is a Berkeley call shad, and as you can see, it's slightly purple because I must have stored it with something that was black and blue. Don't do that. All right, let's move into sub 50 degree water temperatures. And this is a lure that I've never talked about before on this channel, which is going to be the jigging spoon. So the technique with this is once you locate the fish, basically drop this all the way to the bottom and just lift your rod tip about 1 to 2 feet and then let it fall. And be careful, because usually on that fall is when they will absolutely get nailed. When fishing in such cold water, you're gonna wanna watch for those subtle signs of that bite. So be ready to set that hook. And remember, hook sets are free. So with jigging spoons, you actually don't hear about this technique a lot. However, if you can dial this in, it can be a highly effective way to catch bass in these cold temperatures, especially for those bass holding to the bottom. Now, talk about the next lure. So sometimes you just want to catch a fish, and it can be difficult in that sub 50 degree water temperatures. And so this is another one that works for me often. This is going to be your finesse jig, and you can tell it's a finesse jig. It'll have a ball head on the front, and it usually has that spider style skirt on it. And these are going to weigh typically between 3/16 and 1/4 of an ounce. When paired with some type of really small creature bait, these could be highly effective. So if they don't want that monster of a meal, right, you might want to size it down to one of these finesse jigs. I believe this is from KAYAK. I'll throw this in the description below. Love their jigs, by the way. There's a little on the expensive side, but nonetheless high quality. And I usually just fish this on my spinning reel setup, typically between 6 to 8 pound fluorocarbon will do the trick for me. And as you noticed, a lot of my jigs over here, that green pumpkin color. But have you ever asked yourself, what colors do bass actually see? Well, asked and answered. You can check it out right there. Thanks for watching, guys.